You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Hecho a Mano. This episode is with Daniel McCoy, wonderful artist living in Santa Fe. Daniel currently has work up at the Alcoves 2020 show at the New Mexico Museum of Art, and that's on view through December 15th. Go check that out. They're really great landscape pieces that will hopefully defy your expectations of landscape. Up next at Hecho a Mano is the opening of Grabados Oaxaqueños. This is a group show of 6 different printmakers from Oaxaca City in Mexico. And that opens this Friday, October 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. Hope you'll join us. And that's on view through November 24th. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Really helps, and appreciate you listening.
Well, my Okie accent might come through.
That's great. Well, that's a good place to start. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, Oklahoma, it's, I think we had this conversation already. I was born in Ponca City.
Yes.
Yeah, I only was there for like 6 months though.
Right.
Yeah.
Ponca City, got a lot of friends there still. And then there used to be a huge cookout biker swap meet gathering. We'd go up there and camp once a year.
Oh, cool.
So it was a big deal.
Uh-huh.
And then also there's lots of good Osage powwows. So split kind of a 2 different cultures going on there. One a subculture, but they were kind of melded for me. So
right.
Yeah.
So were you born in Tulsa?
I was born in Tulsa,
Yeah.
but I grew up in a small community called Olive or Bristow. There's a oil boom town about every 15 miles or less, or a community. And so I grew up on a farm out there until I was 15. And then I went to boarding school, and then I moved right out here when I was 17.
And did your parents weren't artists, is that right?
No, but they were frustrated artists. Everybody in the family did something. And it was just because there was a lot of downtime growing up. There was nothing to do.
Right.
And my parents weren't athletic. My dad was a biker and a hot rod enthusiast and a pinstriper. But at the same time, he was a deep thinker and appreciated European art. So we attended all types of art shows, especially at the Gilcrease, Philbrook. And then also he collected books. We always had this. And then my mom was a frustrated artist, but and I just now recently found this out. I think, I don't know if it's the truth or not, but she kind of helped instill work ethic. And so she she was into things like quilting, which would be considered more craft art now, but there wasn't such a genre then. And just kind of like, leave me alone, go draw. And so she would always I'd get a drawing table that we paid for with green stamps that we picked up at Safeway. There was always good music being played. Both of them had great taste in music. So I'd study album covers. Comics. Comics were when we went to town, which was a 15 to 30 mile drive. Couldn't get a toy, but you could get a comic because it was 25, 50 cents, whatever. And so there was tons of that.
Right.
And so everybody dealt with their downtime differently. My grandfather made furniture, did wood carving. And my grandmother was a seamstress and did a little beadwork. And then they all had great taste in music, too.
So they were all making things.
They were all doing things with their hands.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like keep busy. And so it's kind of like you didn't know that you're producing something. But, yeah, Dad had to build something fast, drive it up and down the road, and get the other men in the households nearby to get a bike or a car and drive it up down the road fast.
Well, I think it's interesting how things like that can get so separated out from what people call making art. There's a lot of the potters that I work with from Oaxaca, when people call them artists, they're like, well, what do you mean? Like,
right.
To them, it's like, we just make pots, and so, but I think you're kind of coming at it from two angles there too. Like, I think it's just important to recognize that creativity is like at the base of so much, and that we have an opportunity to be creative in a bunch of different ways.
I think it was really very much weaved into a lifestyle for them, and me being the first generation that didn't go into the military. My dad and grandfather made a really big point, and as well as my uncles, that I wasn't going to be you go get your education, or my whole generation. And also, my grandfather collected native art. It was, I think it was maybe a sense of pride coming from like the New Deal era of politics, and so we collected either family members that did artwork or other tribal people in the same tribe. So Creek, Seminoles, or Potawatomi, we saw tons of artwork. And my first taste out here was my grandfather had Pablito Velarde. And so and I think my grandmother was a bit jealous of her. So it was kind of like that. And then I would notice the fine line, flat style, which was in native art, and then my dad being non-native, he did pinstriping. Well, I had no idea that these were separate.
Right.
I had no idea. I'd see a pinstriping design and think, or a waterbird design from a Archie Blackout painting and think it was the same thing. And so later on I started, but it was recognizing line quality and just drawing. I would watch a commercial and memorize it and draw it. And it's just a way to pass time. But then also there was farming, gardening, all types of things.
Yeah.
In there.
That's great though that we don't necessarily learn those separations until later, that the way that we sort of categorize things and put this into this bucket and this into that bucket, right. And these don't really overlap. And I love that, when we're kids, like those distinctions, they don't mean anything.
No, there was no divider on any of that. It kind of, until I went to school.
Yeah.
Stopped drawing. Stopped daydreaming. Watch the clock. Things like that,
right, Right.
And of course now that's really intertwined in our everyday moment. I think I'm worrying about the clock when I'm asleep.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you've got a busy world, so you've got a lot to keep up with.
Yeah. It's fun though.
And so when did you move out to Santa Fe?
Well, I went to this little small country school, and it was great growing up, and until adolescence hit, and then all we had really for role models were our parents. And after that, I felt I was really different than the rest of the kids. So I went to boarding school, and that I was kind of accepted there. And
where was that?
This was in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And they had an art program there, and I had a teacher named Mary Adair Horsechief, and she made you feel terrible. It was the first art class I'd ever had. If you didn't do native art. And so we would study a different style. And so then we started sending art out to student competitions when I was 14 or 15. It'd be the Herd Museum out here, poster contest, and then people started buying. So it became a way not only to continue your education, but escape the, home. Not that was necessarily, but of course you want to explore. But I also had some relatives that would talk about out here in Santa Fe. There was a Yuchi artist named Richard Whitman. He's more of an actor now, but he would talk about it, like how he used to have a spot on the plaza, and if you really want to do the art that you want, it could be accepted out in Santa Fe. So at about 14, 15, me and my classmates, a couple of them, we started really working hard towards this goal. And it's because we would get promotional posters and things from the Institute. And then we wanted to paint like the artist out here.
Mm-hmm.
In Oklahoma, you had to do something like a religious scene or a stickball scene. It was this premeditated formula.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did anything with personal narrative, it was kind of looked down upon by these instructors. So it was kind of a way to rebel. But I moved out here right out of high school when I was 17. I was the youngest student at IAIA in the early 90s. And it was almost too much because I went from a boarding school to kind of a boarding school situation. We were in between the College of Santa Fe campus, or the Art Institute campus now, and then the old Indian school campus. And so, but that was the biggest town I'd ever lived in or been around. And that's kind of where the town ended then.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I loved it. I didn't have to mow the grass. It wasn't humid. I loved the food, and I got along with everybody.
Yeah.
I met like-minded folks that liked the same stuff, which wasn't the case in Oklahoma.
Right.
So I'll take off and then come back and take off and come back, and it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Tell me about Bob.
Well, Bob was, I'll just say his last name, Bob Johnson.
Yeah.
God bless him. He's been passed on for some time. He was my mom's family friend. Kind of almost, we were relatives in a way. We were so close, but he was one of the guys. I had these older friends that I always hung out with older folks, and he was he'd been in the military, and he was friends with Richard Whitman, and I believe, but he knew about Santa Fe being kind of an art mecca, and we would hang out at night and drink and things, and I would sketch at the table, and he'd say, "Hey, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You should go out there." And so he was very encouraging. And it was just through just a few suggestions. Now that I think of it, we didn't really even talk about that much, but those suggestions.
That's all it takes, right?
Sometimes just one little suggestion. And so I'm still, these people we're talking about, they're all gone now. I'm still kind of working hard to make them happy wherever they might be, it's still that original idea, that original spark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to, impress these people somehow.
Yeah, it's crazy how we have, these certain innate things that might be dormant, and one person that we look up to says, "Hey, that's good."
Yeah, and
then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, really?"
Mm-hmm.
And then that can kind of set it free, let us kind of play around in that.
Bob was different. He drove a really cool car, and he'd wear cabbie hats, and he was into soul music, and then he'd have really good stories. So he was kind of one of the guys that got out, one of the relatives that got out of the community and kind of saw the world. And so anybody that did anything like that, I listened. That was very important. So yeah, he suggested it. I think mentioned the school.
Mm-hmm.
So, he kind of added the framework there. I think a lot of his nieces and nephews and his daughter, I don't think any of them really know that.
Yeah.
That
That's
are still
so
back
cool.
home, that I'm friends with still to this day.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, he was a grade younger than my mom, so he'd always kind of cruise around and be around.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and going back to, your teacher, not kind of looking down on quote unquote non-native art, which I think that's a whole other conversation too, right? What we think, or what anybody thinks, is art from a particular culture, right?
Well, it was so narrow. I think the scope was so narrow. The only other art to get into was Western art, or still lifes. And so, as you get outside of that ring, you start seeing the good things of all. Also, I want to add to that. I had a aunt that lived in New York, and we would go up once a year. And so starting from maybe 79, 80, until about 97, I went to New York at least once a year. Sometimes we'd stay there a little bit. So I got to see Keith Haring's artwork in the subways. It would be my little dose of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, and those were like little ninja bombs, ninja computer chips put in the back of my head to add maybe pop elements or just different areas of interest. I got to see the birth of hip hop through these visits. All types of things. My cousin Rocky was really into punk rock, and they would come down and either bring like a Grandmaster Flash record or a Motorhead record or something, and that would just blow my mind. It'd be good for the year. So, I used to play these things in my grandmother's trailer, in between Engelbert Humperdinck or whoever, Okay, you can play your record. Yeah. But so that was just another world for me. And so I was learning art history then, just being a young consumer, just taking it in visually.
Right.
And really making a big impression on me.
Right. That's cool. When you went first time you went to II, what was your work like at that point?
It was coming out of the throes of traditional. I really didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was still kind of very flat style, and we had an instructor named Dwayne Slick and Max Stevens, those two. And they
sounds like a great pair of names.
Well, they were a great pair. And so that Dwayne Slick was my painting instructor, and at the time he did these washes, kind of just off-color washes. And it was abstract, and it was conceptual. And I had no idea what to do then. And the critiques would be kind of rough. And he made everybody throw out water-based paints, which the majority of us used. I don't know why that is. When a lot of native painters use water-based materials, but I had a bit of experience with oils, and so we did. And it basically, and then Max Stevens was my three-dimensional teacher, and she kind of taught me how to put narrative and personal story into and she does these great installations. And between the two of them, they really just tore me apart, reassembled. Okay, get out there and do it again.
Do you think that oil water thing, is it like just like this assumption that oil paint is more like, I don't know, high art or something?
I don't know. I was talking to that was a friend the other day. I don't know why there is that, but it goes all the way down to the Dorothy Dunn School, the Bacone School, all these art schools that started in the 30s. They didn't teach their students necessarily with oils. And then the few artists that did progress in the oils always went back to water-based at the end. There's only a handful that do. And I don't know why that is. I've made the permanent switch back to oils as of this last year. Just because I think there's a truth, a viscosity. You can bring higher prices. There's all these benefits. And also, if you make the mistake, you don't have to live with it right then and there. I tell my 13-year-old son, painting is the great eraser. You can always go back and redo it,
It's odd, though, that you can get higher prices for oils, though, isn't it?
I don't know why that is.
I think there's some kind of thing in just the assumption of what, I don't know, classical art is. I think that just sort of carries over into thinking, it's oil.
It's that classical anchor, and it's an old time rule, I guess. But you step into a different bracket. And so I stopped using it for 20 years because I've been around green studios, people who were sensitive to any type of, and I am too nowadays. So but I'm around people that have taught me a nice, safe way to handle and paint with them. And so, and plus they've come a long way, solvents and whatnot. But I don't know why that is. And I think a lot of, native painters could benefit from painting with oils and enamels. So right after I crashed and burned back to IAI, I was just too young. I was very wild, and I crashed and burned. And my oldest son, who's 26 now, was on his way. And so I went back to Oklahoma, and I tried to make it as on my own in Oklahoma City, doing art, hustling art everywhere. And it was very difficult. What they had taught me at IA, forget about it. That doesn't work. And so I was hanging around with some graffiti artists. So I thought I'd try that out, and I was real bad. I got arrested, and so
doesn't help.
That didn't help. So that wasn't very cool. And so to add insult, to injury to insult, I got a job right after the arrest, touching up graffiti that was on billboards. And so I worked with this crazy art crew in this commercial art district in Tulsa, touching up graffiti first. And after the course of about 7-8 years, I graduated to pictorial artist. And they taught me all the stuff, all the work ethic involved with arts. And I got my chops up that the conceptual artist at IA didn't give. I learned how to do all types of things, from diamond rings to Mack trucks to cheeseburgers but it was all photorealism. And so by the late 90s, computer printing had pretty much, inkjet printing had just replaced all advertisements. I didn't know that I was in a dying, I could kind of see it. So something I dedicated 7 years of my life to just suddenly fizzled overnight. And so I thought, well, I'll come back to IA and finish up. And it was, I thought, I'll be the old guy there. No, it's not going to. All my friends, all the people I'd missed were all still there. And so now I had the abilities to keep up and also stay afloat. And then it took life experience. I'd gone through the school of hard knocks. I was a single dad, things like that.
Well, I think it really is beneficial to have some life experience before getting into, it's like I went straight into college after high school, but if I were to go to grad school now, I think I would do a much better job than say coming right out of undergrad or something. Just because knowing what I want, knowing what's important to me, knowing like what advice to take and what to leave behind, it's for me in my teens and 20s, I didn't know what I was doing. So it's just kind of like flailing around, hoping something honest will come out.
I was like a leaf in the wind. It's just So and then once that changed, I tried to be a sign painter here, and I can still see some of the signs I did hanging up around. So I worked for a few companies here, and it was just different. It wasn't as hands-on, and so slowly but surely, I'd be hanging signs up and down Canyon Road, and somebody would say, "Hey, do you know how to hang paintings?" And so I would, yeah, I do. I'll come back. And so I started doing side work along with the fine art education. And it kind of slowly morphed into this other side of working in the arts, which I love doing. I love being surrounded by the arts. It's part of collecting. It goes back to comics and Hot Wheels and rock whatever it is, stamp collecting. I like memorizing artists. I've worked good as a registrar because of that. So it's just being surrounded, learning every little niche I can. I don't know why that is.
I can relate to that for sure.
But I almost appreciate setting up other artists' shows and seeing the smile on their face and comfort as more as like setting up, my wife and I setting up our own shows.
Yeah.
I get just as much, if not more so.
That's why I love this, doing this kind of work.
It's something very rewarding about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have frustrations, but,
sure.
But, that negative side of it's a lot less than the positives, for sure.
Somebody said this phrase to me over the weekend. I was trying to kind of explain to her why I, appreciated, this kind of work, curating and like holding space for other artists. And I was trying to kind of maybe just verbally work it out for myself, like why that was more fulfilling for me than making things myself. And she was like, "Oh, you delight in delight." Huh. And I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. I really like." It's a catchy phrase, but
yes.
it's very true. Like when I see inspiration in other people, like that really like gets me going. I'm like, "Wow, yeah, go!" I wanna be a part of it, even if it's just like just talking about it with them or helping them to get a show on the wall. Like I want to be a part of it.
Right. That's. I guess I've never heard that saying, but I guess that's what it is. And that's why I've done, and ever since then, that's been 20 years now, I've worked as assistants, art assistants of several different artists, been on artwork teams like such at Site Santa Fe, where basically they're directing you, and I enjoy every aspect of it. If I'm physically able to do it, of course. And then also the business side of it, the helping curate. I'm very interested.
Yeah.
And I just hope it just keeps progressing on, and I just can morph with because in the art business, it's never going to be the same thing twice. It's always going to be a different take on it. And then, just when I think I'm falling out of love with producing artwork, then you have to, then I got to, it's how I guess keep time, or, some people have diaries. Well, I put it in paintings and storytelling through that. And so, yeah, I usually produce, some years have been, you only do 5 paintings, and then some years you do 100. So it just depends on however life is, but it's definitely a lifestyle.
Yeah. On your second trip to Iowa, what was your work looking like at that point? Was the sign painting kind of starting to come into that?
The sign painting, the pop element. I'd been doing punk rock posters. I was a local musician there in Tulsa.
So you had a little bit more grounding in your own sensibilities. And
I had some time, and I was still sitting in the house and drawing all the time during my downtime. Musical education had improved. I'd seen quite a bit of the world, or quite a bit of America at that point, and I'd met a lot of various creative characters. So I'd tried doing, I painted 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week usually. And so it was just something I had to do. And so the work was looking very pop-oriented. I still, once I came back, kind of tried to put this native flat style into it. And all those attempts kind of got shot down. And so I started putting more of a pop storytelling element. My dad used to collect Zap comics, and then also have a bunch of Ed Daddy Roth, Big Daddy Roth, whatever his nickname was, and Robert Williams had a lot of his artwork in books. I guess he used to do posters for some of the biker gangs and stuff out there, and so Dad had some of those. And so I took those elements and I wanted to put a pop element into native art. And at the time, there weren't too many artists doing that in my little bubble. You can say Shanto Begay kind of did some elements of it, but I wanted to take the flat style, which was kind of cartoony, and mix it with these pop elements and kind of put some of the my dad also collected psychedelic posters. When he was a Hell's Angel, he did security for Bill Graham and was at all these kind of counterculture shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had these great collection of posters, magazines, albums, etc. And so I wanted to combine all that. And that was met very well.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I had a good personal narrative with it. And it also gave me the freedom, being mixed blood, I could kind of feel like I was drawing from all influences. It didn't have to be in this bubble, you know. And it was starting, and that got me a lot of mileage.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go just about anywhere I went.
Yeah.
And then I enjoyed being the kind of the sore thumb at these stuffy shows.
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed having a booth at these places, and because that's what I was taught to do, was to do these market shows. That's it. That's all you can do.
Uh-huh.
And so I would really upset the conservative people by having romance cover novels or something really hokey, and I kind of, that was my MO for a while, was to upset and rock that boat, and to make people that, and then I learned a big lesson, of course, after that, you know, but I was very just hell-bent on producing work and progressing that way.
Well, you know, we need people that are rocking the boat, right? I mean, even if, like, I mean, I used to, you know, and you used to play in punk bands, and right, and I used to play in punk bands, and just, you know, wanted to, you know, really just, I didn't know what I was doing, but there was a sense of like, things aren't right, and I'm mad about it.
Yes.
I couldn't articulate any of it, but it came from a very emotional place.
I get, now that you're right,
Yeah.
punk rock and that rebellion that led into punk rock and metal bands, I guess that kind of did play a bit of it, you know, that ethics. That and so I brought all that back to the table.
Yeah.
And now I'd tone it down for certain shows, but, you know, most of the time I was there to, you know, upset my upper peers, you know, my elders.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also a difference between like making work to intentionally upset someone versus like doing what you're doing and it just happens to be sort of outside the sort of norms and it just sort of shakes people.
Yeah.
I think intention has a lot to do with that and how the work comes across.
Right. And all that changed really quick. I realized that there was a lot of other artists doing the same thing, and then that network started, you know. And then now it seems to be kind of the majority, you know. There's a lot of groundbreaking people doing everything.
Yeah.
Involved, you know, this work here. God, if I'd seen that 25 years ago, I would have lost it, you know.
Yeah.
But there's, it seems to have broken in, you know, I thought I would be very excited, and I still am, but I'm also, now that it's infiltrated our bubble, I'm wondering, like, is this the right way to go? Is this the right passage?
What do you mean infiltrated our bubble?
Oh, I meant like the pop element into the Southwestern art scene. Because I saw some other things. There was like some really cool, you know, and you see these artists and they're around for a little bit and then they're gone. You never hear from them again. And some of these names I don't know, unfortunately, but, you know, was it the right thing to push for at Native Art? And you see a lot of kids really doing great work, but it's still at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, let's put the Native in this situation. Oh, he's at McDonald's, you know, or I don't know when you cut that off, you know, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So, but at the same time, there's some groundbreaking artists out there now. So. Right.
Because, I mean, I think, you know, because it comes from this place of wanting to reconcile, I think, this idea of, you know, a separation between, like, you know, whatever traditional Native life is and whatever sort of like, Western consumerism life is.
Right.
And wanting to say like, hey, these things are intertwined, right?
Right.
And it comes from that place. And then once you say that, I think what you're saying is, how often do you need to say that?
How often?
Once it's been said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there just seems to be, and I might be just as guilty, it's on kind of repeat. And so since that pop element's moved in, I kind of want to move back towards maybe some of the realism,
Mm-hmm.
some of those lessons I was taught in the billboard business, trying to draw from that a bit. I don't know. It's and I'm just excited about continuing producing work as I was, as a teenager.
Well, the newer paintings that I've seen of yours certainly like have some of those pop elements, but move away from like it's very different from the stuff you've done before,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I stopped doing landscapes 20 years ago because it was a waste of paint, and I just wasn't into it. I had all these instructors. That's another form of rebellion, that were into landscapes. Let's go out, let's drive up to Hyde Park, and you need to draw. And I thought it was a waste of materials because I was so broke, I didn't have any money. And so I stopped doing them. I would pick professors or people that I know where I wouldn't, they'd want a personal narrative from within, not something that you see and you're the conduit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped doing it, and all of a sudden, it's almost been a year to the day. I was working as an artist, assistant to an artist that does a lot of landscapes. 2/3 of his work is landscapes, mountainscapes, and so that started seeping in. My studio mate, Mateo Romero, does these great kind of gooped up landscapes, and he'll use $40 of oil paint in one swipe, and I can't take that chance. And so, these two gentlemen are my peers, and they started suggesting I change the narrative a bit. And then, so I went next door. I took a break, and I went and I saw an abstract show at the IA Museum, and I saw this artist named George Morrison. He's a Chippewa artist. And he was doing these square, L-shaped, kind of pixelated forms, and his abstract. And I've always loved abstract art. I just never could stick with it. It was the background. And then my son was drawing with pixels. And it was like learning another way of scaling up or gridding something. And so I was just, and then there's all this great Charles Laloma jewelry was in the studio. All of a sudden, I just was bombarded with all this great eye candy. And so I was out hiking up in Pewaukee with my son, and I saw this view of the mountains, Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and I just started painting. And I would just kind of block in color, and then it started forming, and then I'd like to keep the comic element in there, and so that's very much, my line work is very much influenced by the flat style Indian painting, but also artists like R. Crumb and Jack Kirby, the black solid line work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would break down it in abstract as if it was jewelry or a George Morrison. I wasn't trying to do or even artists like Piet Mondrian or the Partridge Family bus. Watching the Partridge, it was in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Tile work, pottery. I just saw it. It was just one of those things. So this year is nothing but landscapes. And so I started working little bits of architecture, which it just depends on the audience. I really like it. I like putting bits of a towering landscape that's broken down color-wise. And first I was just kind of like, okay, this is close. This is Southwest, But now I've really dialed in to looking at like the Taos Masters, art that maybe I kind of overlooked as when I was younger, really paying attention to the color palette, taking all night to mix 5 colors and applying them right. Taking my time, and so that's where I'm at right now, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
But I think after this last little chunk I've done, I've got to do something figurative. It's about 30 pieces. I'm just going, okay, all right, that's time to go.
The
back.
work that I saw at Etiquette, I mean, I really loved it, and I think you described it really well. But I mean, in looking at these almost like Tetris-like forms, and then the line work that's over it. I mean, for me, it really allowed me to play in the painting for a long time.
Right.
Just because I could just go in these different directions and move around. I mean, they're really dynamic.
Now, the color behind it, that's where I really chew my nails and take a long time. Triple coating. And so after the ones at Etiquette, I had to go, okay, we're going to go back to oils. I don't care what anybody says, we're going back to oils. And what I'm talking about is people in my household that I don't want this in the house, or So that's what that's about. But so the line work is very. It's kind of a meditative moment, and I started in the top left corner and I worked down to the bottom right, and that's where. I work from a photograph. I go hike in these areas. I work from a photograph, several photographs. I obsess over them until I find the right one. And so I'm still looking, and recording something from life. But with the cartooning, at the very end result, you go, oh, well, it's not, why did I go to so much trouble?
It's going through your filters. It's going through your lens.
It's the filter.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of, I just let my mind go, and it's it's such a nice process, and it's a new process and a new formula, and it's taken me this long, and it's made also out of my love for the landscape here in New Mexico, which I think is what it originally made me move out here.
Yeah.
Driving. My kids are, it's kind of a celebrating how things are and where I am at this point. And so I'm glad I waited 20 years to do the landscapes, because I've always kind of put little bits of it, but it was always to push up what was the activity going on.
Yeah.
It was always a supportive act. This is just... I'm going to areas I've stared at for a long time and putting them on painting, and therefore, it's part of the history now.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, you stare at them every time you drive by. So, and all these years hiking, all these great areas, and so, and I've been taking photos for about 10 years, so I have a lot to draw from.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was going to do it one day, I just didn't know how.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me in a way of like coming back to grad school after being out in the world for a while, coming back to landscapes after, not doing them for so long. Yeah. And I think about that sometimes too, because, I mean, I went through a studio art program, and, I wonder sometimes, am I going to get back into a studio and start making things again? I think I will. Yeah. I just don't know when,
Yeah. You have to.
Yeah.
You're around. You've seen so many great things that you have to. Your hands will just follow suit one day.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it for me was like I don't think I had quite the amount of motivation I needed to try to like do it for work, for a career, and so I don't know. I wonder if if I get to a point where I'm like, I don't need to work, like if I'm like 65 or I'm retired or something, and then maybe I might, I don't know. I hope I don't have to wait that long, but
I don't know. I don't know why I'm so stubborn. I got in upper management and did really well. My wife at the time and I were doing really good, and financially, and I was the most unhappiest I ever was.
Yeah.
And to go back to being hungry and creating, and I don't know, there's some strange need to do it.
I mean, the gallery gig definitely satisfies a lot of those creative needs for me. But like, you know, I mentioned that gallery that I started working for when I moved here, and I made the most money I've ever made in my life working there, and I had to leave because I didn't have any creative freedom. I mean, there was a lot of problems I felt with the work that was there. Yes. And then moved into, you know, another gallery where I had a lot more creative flexibility.
Absolutely.
And that was great. But then it's like, I need to take it to the next level. Like, I need to be able to like have complete creative freedom. And now, like, I mean, the gallery is doing fine. Like, I'm only 6 months in, but like, I haven't paid myself. You know what I mean? But I'm having the most fun.
Right.
You know?
It's very fulfilling.
Yeah.
I understand completely.
Yeah.
I understand completely. And I think sometimes when you separate yourself from those things that society can project onto you that you need, that's when you're, you know, maybe you're at your creative most, or you're fulfilled. To the point, I know. Mine was out there. We had, oh, good Lord, I don't even know how we made it then, but I had it was my grandfather's old upholstery shop, and I'd sit out there and paint. Best stuff ever, you know, that came out. I was on a creative roll. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what triggers that. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
You know, but I totally understand. I've tried to start little galleries. You know, we used to have pop-up shows like yard sale ethics, but it'd be a group of artists, and it'd be great. You know, have the best weekend ever.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm a frustrated gallery owner myself, so I can understand.
Well, I think about some of those artists that, you know, do manage to like make it financially, and the ones that still like continue to like to push the envelope. I think that's amazing. Like that they're able to get to a point where they're comfortable financially and yet still are willing to risk, you know, like, oh, I'm not going to do that thing anymore that got me here. I'm going to try something totally different. Right. You know, and they're still willing to take those creative risks. I think that's really amazing because I know that kind of hunger or that kind of that sense of like that just deep motivation can sometimes be a motivation, right? Like, and if you're comfortable, like maybe for some people, you don't quite have that same level of motivation. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. My oldest son's grandfather, he'd take me around to Oklahoma City, and he was a jeweler. He'd get up and at 3:45, 4 in the morning and bang out 2 rings. And he'd say, "Come on, Dan, I'll teach you how to go sell." And he would go around and we'd drink coffee with all these old men and smoke cigarettes all over. I'd be green as an apple by noon, you know. But I remember there being this one, and I don't remember who the artist was. I want to say Benjamin Harjo. But right there, I think it was on 23rd Street, kind of by the shopping mall. They had a house. He worked in the back, and they had a little picture window, and they would put up the newer pieces. And they would go. Every week or so, there was new pieces. I just remember, and also that being a grandiose version, that being inner city. There's also artist, I don't know if he's still alive, Kesey Greenfeather. He would make things, he'd paint drums and just give them out to the community. Somehow just putting it out for whoever might want it, bringing a brighter day, whatever that is. That's what attracted to me. Mm-hmm. You know, people would bring stuff over to my dad's shop so he could pinstripe them. Don't worry about it. You know, just different, various, just for whoever would listen, for whoever wanted it. If it helps them out, and if you have this gift, or you can do whatever it is, rebuilding instruments, you know, whatever. You know, if you have a chicken coop that has lots of eggs, give out eggs, you know, whatever, you know. Right. Just that bartering system of community. I think that's where it starts for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you talk to a lot of artists, I mean, the whole idea of needing to make money from art really gets in the way.
It gets in the way.
And I think most artists would probably prefer to just, whatever, have all your stuff taken care of, and like you just give the art away. It's yeah.
I think when the financial side gets to be the controlling factor, and not saying that's a bad thing, but I do think some of the artists can lose sight.
Sure.
Completely.
Sure.
And I've seen it done, and so I'm wary,
Totally. Yeah. No.
But I'm very happy when it happens.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think like it's a really great position to be in, where you can support yourself and your family by making things. It's incredible, and I want the same for myself.
Right.
But I hear you. Like, I also want to be conscious of, like, okay, if I find some sort of formula that works, am I going to be like stuck in the formula? Like, am I going to like, oh, I guess I got to do this formula now? Or am I going to have the courage to be like, to try something risky? I don't know.
See it through.
Yeah.
You have to see it through.
Yeah. Until
you're like, okay, I've said all I can say this way. Okay, I'll, and until something else comes, knocks it off the block.
Mm-hmm.
That's the benefit. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So you've got an opening coming up this Friday. So this is coming out next Tuesday. So it'll be after the opening. But
okay.
So you've got the show up at the museum, right?
Yes, at the New Mexico Museum of Art. I'll be in the Alcoves 2020 #2 show, sharing space with 4 other artists. Forgive me, I don't have they're new artists to me.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested. I'm always interested in seeing new work and hearing new voices. So this is a big deal for me.
Is this the landscape work?
These are 5 new landscapes that are smaller, considerably smaller, but they're all, I checked out books, I went and researched everything, I discussed color palettes with Western artists, Native artists. I really did my research. I've worked harder than I ever did in college on these smaller paintings, and they're all based on New Mexico and influenced by New Mexico artists of all walks of life, going from jewelry to abstract to classic paintings from 100 and 200 years ago. I really looked and researched and spent a lot of time into these, and then they're all from areas in northern New Mexico. And so that'll be on the 18th, and I believe it's up almost until New Year's.
Awesome. Great.
So it's a big deal for me. And so I've after work, I'll go on there and work on these until late at night.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the paint's dry enough to work on them the following evening. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Consecutive days on these paintings.
Yeah, well, congrats on the show.
So I'll have the first landscape, and then the most recent. So I want to. Part of the reward is getting them all together and looking at them, and so I want to see the very first, which was an acrylic piece, and I want to see the difference between them, and they'll be great.
Yeah, cool. Can you think of an artist or a piece of artwork or something that really sort of changed your approach, changed the way you thought about art, something that was like a direction shifter for you?
Oh, I have several, but the one that made me really shift was that I saw a piece called Border Crossing from Bob Houses when I was a teenager. I think it was the first year. And I think you could it was kind of interactive, and it was the painting though that was on it. It was 3-dimensional, but it was painting, and it had to do with, on one side was this pristine landscape, and then you walk around to the back of the sculpture, and it showed America from Mexico's viewpoint. I believe that's how the interpretation went, but it was so powerful, it just blew me away. Before that, I would say was a piece by an artist that's probably not known around here very well. Her name's Joan Hill, and it's called War and Rumors of War. And I saw that piece, and it really literally made me go home and start working on something. It made me paint. It made me try painting. And my one of my triptychs hangs right next to it in a collection in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
So, and I've gotten to know this artist, and so that's another reward is being able to rub elbows and meet and talk art with people that you look up to.
Totally.
And that's part of the reward too, not only just visually, but those two pieces specifically.
In Joan's work, what about it really spoke or moved you and made you want to create?
Joan Hill's work, it was different than the other flatline. Even she was a Bacone artist, which is around Muscogee, Oklahoma, which I had an opportunity to go to school there. And sometimes I still regret that I didn't. But she had movement. It wasn't just hieroglyphic, the typical formula. It had movement, and she was an oil painter too. So she was had multiple disciplines. She had 2 or 3 styles, and she worked from dreams, which if I worked from my dreams, they'd be pretty boring. But her work is just fascinating. She's still in Muskogee, still working, but to see that painting years later at my collector's house with my own eyes, it was like fulfillment.
Yeah.
30 years down the road. So,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, those two pieces.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any other shows to kind of put on the calendar?
Well, yes, I have the holiday show coming up here.
Yep.
And I'm creating.
Thank you. I should promote my own.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm trying to do. I'm doing a lino cut with combinations of India ink.
Oh, cool.
And so I remember printmaking being kind of a point of interest here.
Yeah.
And so this will be my first lino cut in several years. So I love printmaking. It's just I can get almost right to the end of a block and mess it up and things like that. So I'm a bit
can't
leery.
Paint over it.
Yeah, that's one thing I can't erase. So that, and then I just got hit up yesterday morning to do a Day of the Dead show, and I've never done anything like that. And it's with a good group of artists, and it's going to be at some restaurant in Pewaukee. And the restaurant, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. It sounds fun. There's some good names involved, artists I respect. And then this whole winter is going to be nothing but I.O. commissions to all types of people. Not necessarily just money, but just like friendships and trades. And I don't like to be a person that doesn't have a concept of time. I like to be good on all, and life has been so busy here lately with family and all our routines that we can get locked into that I haven't got the time to do stuff like that. So I have a huge list, and I'm getting everybody marked off by the time New Year's hits. Nice. And so, and I'm working on a comic.
Oh, cool.
The Adventures of Hot Sauce Man #1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
That'll be another fulfilling. I feel like my strength in writing is a bit more so.
Hot Sauce Man gets onto the page.
Yes.
Wow.
And so it's taking New Mexico stories and experiences and putting them through these various characters.
Yeah.
And going to work on that comic.
That's great. I heard Allsups got bought out.
Oh, really? So they're no longer... Well,
I think they're going to stay Allsups. I think what I read is that they want to keep it the way that they are, but that's what the press release says anyway. But
well, they were... Well, I know the owner. I did paper on Allsups. They invented the self-serve gasoline pump, and the first one was down in Roswell.
Really?
And there's all these innovations that the company did. And what got my interest years ago is I was looking at a corporate America map, Budweiser is in Missouri. Nike is in New York. Just all these different. I can't get them all right, but I always thought it was weird that Allsup's was for New Mexico. Well, it was the largest privately owned corporation, and my connection with them is that I've seen crazy things happen, all types of crazy culture there. And so
I think you just drop into an Allsup's and you'll see
you're
crazy
going to see
things
something.
happen.
And so I have this collection of all these great stories that have happened, all these characters I've met, some people I still know that, you meet at a convenience store. And plus, it was totally off the hook for me. I mean, there was one right across the road from where I went to college. So I think they're hubs of New Mexican culture. And so now I'm starting to see it filter in artwork of younger artists that are great. They're putting this whole hip twist to it. I'm seeing like Instagram models pose at Allsup's. That's tripping me out. So I kind of like the fact that it's gotten into the artwork a bit. I just kind of like their choice of colors. I like their aprons, those aprons with the silkscreen images. Their employees are always kind of like have a take no mess attitude, and then I always I like Cooper font. So there's all these different things, and I used to install signs, and so I don't know. I just try to, for the comic though. To keep it right, I'll probably change the name of the store and make it my own narrative, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes, of course, or get myself in trouble. Yeah, but it'll be, let's see, when I started 2011, 2012, been doing the hot sauce stuff. So it somehow people enjoy it. It's gotten one of the first things I've ever done that's gotten. It transcends all barriers and borders, and everybody seems to like it. Kids love it. I've almost went up to Santa Clara and taught kids how to draw hot sauce man whenever that happens. So that's kind of like there's all these great benefits to it. So yeah, I'm thinking about doing some coloring books, maybe a bit more of an adult version of it, and then some kids stuff too. Right. I'm a parent. I don't want to do anything that's going to embarrass me down the road.
That's funny. Yeah. Have you seen the All Sad mashup?
I saw that, and All Sick. I saw a tattoo that said All Sick.
That's great. Yeah.
So it's coming from all different ways, and I don't know if it's just a good sense of timing, but it's neat. It's sad that it's going to go corporate or get bought.
Well, apparently the company that bought it is smaller than Allsup's.
Well,
so I don't know. The press release made it sound like they ain't changing a thing.
Okay,
but who knows?
It works, but like I've said, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I've seen romance. I've seen gunfights. I've seen you name it. I've seen.
Honey, I got you a fried burrito. Will you marry me?
And the sleeves. And so
there's like a ring stuffed in the burrito.
I saw an IA student. She had done a Zia in the burrito wrappers, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool,
Oh, that's great.
So I'm the comics take time, a lot of re-editing and reworking. And so I've talked to the local comic store here, and they've showed interest. So that's all. And I've always wanted to do a comic. I've just never been able to move past a few pages. And so it's getting the story down and writing everything out. And then hopefully my son Noel will help me with some of that too. And then I have just this great group of artists I'm surrounded by, and so maybe it can turn into something that just keeps going, something New Mexico themed, because there's a great story here, and I think it'd be just very satisfying.
Yeah,
you can tell I'm very excited.
That's great.
Yeah,
no, that's so cool, man. That's great. Cool. People can find you. What's your website?
Daniel McCoy Jr.com. Yes,
www.jr.com. Cool. Well, this is fun.
Yes,
thank you so much,
Frank.
Daniel. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yes.